again there, folks. So we've had another terrorist attack in London, and I didn't just want to do nothing about it because there's this argument that people make, which is to say that we can't just accept this stuff as a standard day to day practice in England. That we can't just think this is normal. I actually think it already is normal. And that's kind of what I wanted to get into here. And I've waited for a few days so that the cycle has run itself out, and it starts where in the first phase where you see it like on social media, or it'll be on the news or on the radio if you're at work, that something is happening. There's an incident, and everybody knows what that means now. You're alert to a certain set of key phrases, which is to say that there's been a terrorist attack. And you go on social media and you can see that there's a man being shot dead, and you'll see this video of it sandwiched between the Tesco's Christmas ad and then an ad for Amnesty International, and you can like it and retweet it. And it's something's happened. It's an event. They call it an incident in the liberal media, politicians, but it's an event, and everybody gets sucked into it. And the first things people are looking at is like how many people are dead. And I think a lot of people secretly they're disappointed when they find out that the event itself is over. It's this kind of will that they want more carnage and more destruction. And I also think that when you see it, just the sight of all of these grand buildings from when Britain was great, these neoclassical architectural buildings in the background and they're so big and they're so epic and imposing, and they speak to so much national pride. And now in 2019, they stand there in the background as somebody from the third world is shot dead by armed police with diversity bollards in the background, and you get to like it all on social media and retweet it for your friends. That's pretty much the first phase of the cycle. And this is the most shocking phase because people don't know. I mean, at first, of course, there is increasingly the possibility that it will be like a far right killer, and you know the liberals and the leftists are getting their hopes up that it will be that, because everybody's got their own narrative, everybody's got their own drum to beat. But in this case, it turned out once again that they were disappointed, and that it was a Muslim again. And this then led on to the second phase, which I saw, which was thousands of Labour supporters and leftists saying that it was actually a false flag to make, and it has to be said as well that there is this trend of these terrorist attacks of one hue or another happening just before election cycles or just before an election. That is actually a thing that does check out, but it will be a different video to dig into that a little bit more. But that is an interesting thing. But in this case, they had like a false flag was trending on Twitter, and what that speaks to is that so many people on the left, Corbyn supporters, Labour voters, the middle class liberal types, the politically correct drones, they saw that there was another terrorist attack, and they then must have sort of they came to the conclusion that must be bad for them. So if there's a terrorist attack involving a Muslim, then their sort of knee-jerk reaction is to think, oh shit, this is going to be bad for us. We are tied to this. And so what they did was try to say, well, it's a false flag. This is so then this is Boris Johnson or MI5, the Tory government, have carried out a false flag in order to make us look bad. And there's a lot to that. There's a lot going on with that psychologically. But they didn't have to wait too long, actually, because by Saturday morning, a new narrative had been formed, and it was there. You had this Polish fella and somebody else, and the footage emerged of the terrorist being attacked with the whale, a narwhal tusk, and a fire extinguisher. And so now the false flag narrative was dropped, because instead, maybe because the PR departments, and I did a video on that as well. The PR departments picked it up, and then they decided that we can go with this narrative of the vigilante, the plucky Brits out on the street, taking matters into their own hands, in defence of liberal values against this weird nut job, and we can celebrate that, and we can spin it to be a positive story. So the footage of the man being shot in the head at point blank range sort of drifted away. It disappeared to a certain extent, or was just supplanted by the new narrative of the plucky little Brits standing up and cheering on. Oh, isn't it funny? He's using a whale tusk that he pulled off the wall of a pub. Aren't we so cute? Aren't we so lovable? These cheeky Brits standing up for themselves like that. And the seriousness of that, there's what that covers up, you see, is that focus then goes on these quirky sort of British feels that everybody loves, and the fellow was Polish, so they got a pro-immigration narrative weaved into there as well. But what this covers up, what this conceals, is the fundamental problem of the Islamic terrorist running around killing people with a knife. So that then gets concealed, and what's brought forward is the positive narrative and the fire extinguisher and the whale tusk. And this is how this plays out, and I just find it absolutely fascinating. Is it all controlled? Well, yeah, it is, and I've done to a large degree that it is, and I've done a video on that, which I'll thumbnail at the end of this one. There are PR departments who are looking at this, and they're not. It's not 100%, but you'll notice as the election cycle goes on, as the terrorist incident, as that goes on, it becomes less and less shocking and toxic. So that they're not in control of the initial image of the man being shot on the bridge, because it's breaking, and they don't have that level of control. What they have to do is try and manipulate how the public perceive these things. And the fact that you had all of these massive Twitter accounts and the news cycle picking up the plucky Brits with the whale tusk and the fire extinguisher story, that's, you can see how these things move. But then there's another curveball comes into it, and it's because the victims' identities get released, and it turns out that these are very liberal Guardian readers who actually work in the prison system, and they're trying to say that, you know, we have to be lenient. So they've got this very liberal attitude towards the kind of person who killed them. And so this is another curveball. It's caught them off guard again, and then they've had to come out and really come down on this one. But what you can see and is that this other narrative, where it's a Guardian reading, liberal, middle class Cambridge, has a very sort of soft attitude towards murderers, criminals, extremists. If they're not far right, of course, then it changes again. Then they don't want to have to deal with this one at all. And so what you end up with is another narrative being formed around the fact that the prisoner was released. But at each stage of all of these phases, you can see that it's the liberal system as a whole being tested and finding ways of what Keith Woods would say of its anti-fragility. of its way to manipulate the public and manipulate the narrative into all kinds of different ways, which remove from the fact that we have serious structural problems in the West, in Britain especially. And I find the way they manipulate this and the way that this whole cycle plays out, and each is a little bit different but not much, is it always ends in the conclusion where it kind of drifts away into some petty bickering about he got released early, and not some fundamental that the fundamental values of the society are problematic, as they would say. The fundamental liberal conception of how multiculturalism, political correctness, you can see that they do come under some pressure, and in this case directly, because it's the very advocates of political correctness, of liberalism, of tolerance, that have actually been killed. Both victims, they are the ones that have been killed. And so they're now in the process of doing their best to stamp out that people are pointing out is disgusting. How dare you? How dare you use my son to further your agenda? But so the story is in each phase, except for the first one, when they don't, then they're caught off guard because they've got power, but they can't predict the future. But at each phase after that, whether it's the false flag attacks accusations, the sort of the cute Brits with the narwhal tusk, or we have to be proud of these values and my son died for these multicultural values. At each stage is the system trying to cope with a counter narrative that would actually force them to ask some serious and fundamental questions. And so at each stage, it's the liberal system trying to defer any kind of introspection. And it's in some ways organised by PR groups, government think tanks, anti-racist groups, and they are the problem. And so the issue that we have, this fifth column in the country, some people are saying 70,000 wandering around ready to blow a gasket like this. That is a problem for the system to solve, like a glitch in a computer network or something like that. The human element has been removed entirely. This is why I made the video in this way, because it's only about abstract narratives and manipulating the population so that nobody asks fundamental questions about the nature of British society. That's why I think you have this surreal feeling when you look at it all. You're one or two steps removed back from it, and it's because this narrative and this manipulation has actually removed the more fundamental thing, that you have people running around butchering people in the streets, and everything after that, after the initial event, everything that system does amounts to trying to control the narrative, which in a way which is good for liberalism, and it's liberalism and political correctness, multiculturalism, which is the cause of it in the first place. And there's nothing can be done if that's the case. You go round and round in circles. It's a maze. So that's my thoughts on that. I'll catch you later, folks.